This is Horns Up. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And this episode is coming to you a bit later than usual because, well, it takes a bit of effort and time to get four individuals in the room, long-time personal friends, first time on Horns Up. Welcome, journalists Bhanuj, Kappal, and Amit Gurbaxani. Guys, one-line introductions just to get our audiences to know who's who. Amit, let's start with you. Bhanuj, you can come after Amit.
I am a music journalist and a maker of Google Sheets.
Yes, I'm a culture writer and maker of angry Twitter threads.
Perfect.
Fabulous. Alrighty. So we are talking today to essentially dissect one of those Twitter threads, right? Lollapalooza India, the hits, the misses, the context, the future, a SWOT analysis, call it what you may. We'll try and do it chronologically. So I'd like to begin by first setting some sort of context of this festival. Early 2022 saw Mumbai littered with several hoardings promising a weekend like no other. Eventually, that outdoor campaign transformed to announce the arrival of Lollapalooza India in late July 2022. So take us back, guys. In a scene where we've had NH7 for the last decade or so, we've had several other festivals, right from GIR to Magnetic Fields to even Hornbill for that matter. What were you expecting from Lola when you first got to know that, hey, Lollapalooza is happening in India, right in our very own Bombay? Amit?
I actually really didn't know what to expect. I mean, I was curious to know, firstly, how much tickets would be priced at, because, that would sort of set the tone as to what kind of acts we could expect. I really did not know what to expect, because when you should look at things in the Indian context, you're not necessarily going to get the same version of something that's coming to India, internationally. So, yeah, I didn't have any expectations.
Interesting, Bhanuj.
Yeah, so in my case, my wife Nisha was working on the sort of promotional videos and marketing.
Okay.
So I kind of had an idea of what was going on. And yeah, I mean, in terms of lineup, I think a lot of people kind of think of Lollapalooza as the festival it was in the 90s. But once it came back, it shut down and it came back as Ticketmaster, it's a wholly corporate festival. Like it's soulless corporate festival. So I was not expecting a lot really.
Okay.
But I knew Anuj was involved. I knew there were some really good people in the scene who were involved. So I was expecting a relatively decent lineup and a good festival experience.
Okay, Peter, what about you?
I'm going to say this, and I'm sure Amit and Bhanuj are being very polite about this, but Lollapalooza was the worst kept secret of 2022. Everyone knew who was working on it. Everyone knew
everyone who's clued into the music scene, the insiders, and all of us are insiders to some degree, right?
Yeah. I mean, like Bhanuj said, right? His wife was working on it. And I was like, why don't you just sneak into her room and check like what the lineup is, that kind of thing, right?
So her and I have a very strong wall between what we're doing when there's in India, because I remember I was working on that OML story for Caravan about sexual harassment inside OML, and she was working on a project which never ended up happening, to develop a show with Tanmay Bhatt for OML.
Wow.
So I just told her that I am working on a story about sexual harassment with an OML, but we had to keep that wall very separate.
Okay.
So we've developed that. So she didn't tell me about the lineup or anything. I learned from other sources.
Okay.
She wouldn't even confirm it for me.
Wow.
But overall, is there a sense that not just you personally, but from people who you're talking to, etc., was there excitement that, hey, Lollapalooza is coming to India?
I mean, yeah, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, let's put it into like a larger context, right? You've gone like 2 years without festivals largely. And the fact that you've seen NH7, you've seen Supersonic and all these other festivals happening in, the fact that you've got one more major festival happening, and that to an international one, right? Not like, let's be honest, as much as we say Book My Show and all of that, you'd expect an international kind of thing. Like the fact that you have, I'd put it like, look at it, you're looking at it like a sunburn, right? Which is again homegrown. I think that's what initially got people excited. I was laughing when a lot of people thought because Metallica played the one in the US that Metallica would be coming in. So
already,
did you think Metallica was coming, Animesh? I know we've been talking a lot about Metallica lately.
Let's actually build up to that question, right? Okay, so Social media posts eventually reveal that Lola India will be hosted in Bombay. 4 stages, dates get announced, the venue and lineup don't. The pre-sale tickets go live on 1st August. These are meant for people who've signed up for notifications on the site earlier, registered fans, if you like that terminology. Yes, no answers across the room, guys. Did you get your tickets then for when the pre-sale happened?
Yeah, I got the sort of early bird, the second round of
Yeah,
the early
as soon
bird.
as the first couple of hours got over. Yeah.
I didn't pay to go.
Okay, cool. Peter, what about you? Did you buy tickets at that time?
Dude, it was nuts. I remember refreshing, and then like a lot of people were all excited at posting, and I was like, wait, is there something wrong with my system? Then eventually, like let's put it all also into context. This was like booking IRCTC tickets. That was also probably easy.
IRCTC Tatkal tickets, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I remember they started at 5,000 rupees, and I think those
Yeah.
got out in like 3 minutes or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then the next round was 6.5, which is what I got. And then most
Yeah.
people I got the 7.5 early bird, and then it sort of that they closed it at that.
Here's going back to the thing I said about the worst kept secret, right? Like, I know someone who worked at a Lollapalooza, not going to name them, but they told me, you know what, whatever you're doing, just buy the early bird tickets because post that ticket prices are going to skyrocket. So I was like, okay, if you get like such information, then might as well do it, right? So I ended up getting the 6,500 tickets after I don't know like how many attempts of trying, and I was like, okay, excited. So that's what
Okay.
you got also, right, Animesh?
Yeah, the same thing. I think I missed out. I missed out on the first couple of hour tickets, but then they realized their mistake. BMS realized their mistake and opened up a fresh lot of tickets at a slightly higher price. But pre-sale or really early bird passes as such aren't a new concept, right? There are plenty of events, festivals, even conferences that do this. From my experience, though, they do this when they have an established history of sorts, right? Because the audience then knows what to expect because of the event's track record, or they know or are familiar with the event's vibe. And hence, there's some sort of trust that the money spent will be worth it. Is there a history or legacy to Lollapalooza that helped your purchase consideration and decision? Or were you just told that, hey, this is going to be the first Lollapalooza in India and I have to be there? What really drove you to buy that ticket? Amit, since you bought a ticket.
Yeah, I mean, I'd buy tickets for most things. I mean, I kind of knew what the venue was, but it wasn't confirmed. And the venue is kind of important to me.
Yeah.
I haven't gone for gigs if I know the venue is going to be crap. So I knew that this would sort of be a venue where they could, while it would be hell getting there, at least while you're there, it would be fine. Having been to gigs at Mahalakshmi Race Course before. And yeah, I mean, it was obviously, the debut edition of Lola. I was definitely going to be there.
Peter, what about you?
I mean, in hindsight, when I say this, I sound like a dumbass, but I call myself a dumbass for doing that. My way of looking at it was I hadn't done an international trip in a couple of years. I expected some international bands that I'd really want to watch. So I was like, okay, my birthday is around the same time. 6.5 grand, here it goes.
Yeah, that's pretty much
boy.
That's pretty much my thought plan as well. I knew that in January I would need to treat us as such, and which is why I wanted to get these tickets to celebrate. And I knew that'd be at least somebody who I might want to watch or anything of that sort. Okay, cool.
Can I weigh in on this
Yeah, sure, of course.
as a non-ticket buyer? I think this is one of the points I made. When you are releasing a pre-sale without having the event first, what you're really setting up expectations for is the other international festivals that have happened, right?
Exactly. It's the history, right?
And a certain sort of branding. And they played into it. They kept sharing posts from international festivals, international lineups. So I think that was the first mistake, because if you want to manage expectations, then you don't sell tickets to people based on a vibe that you don't control, because you don't have any history, you don't have an established track record here.
Yeah. So let's talk about that then, because surprise, 3rd August, just 2 days later, pre-sale early bird tickets get sold out, following which Lola India starts posting these awesome editorial posts about historic Lola events and lineups from around the world. Genre-based posts that feature a great mix of big names, legacy names, fresh acts, that's safe to say it does a great job of whetting the appetites of music fans, including me. I mean, who wouldn't love to see Red Hot Chili Peppers or Pearl Jam or even Metallica in India in your own backyard, right? And while that's for a rock and metal lover, they've got similar names being posted for a variety of genres, right? From K-pop to Bhangra even. So this goes on for a really long time. September goes by, October goes by. People are largely done manifesting their wish lists. There's even a parody lineup that's circulating on WhatsApp by now. Finally,
Sorry,
3
can I
months
add
later.
there? There was an Animesh in that also, and I remember sending it to you. That was hilarious. Whoever that was, genius move.
Thank you. I'll just say thank you to that. Finally, 3 months later, on 3rd November 2022, we learned two things: that the venue is Mahalakshmi Racecourse, which is perhaps the biggest open field Mumbai has, right? And we learned the Lola lineup.
But before that, we should talk about the Hindustan Times piece that was
Oh.
published that said it would be RSCP, Pearl Jam, and Imagine Dragons.
Oh,
And
really?
then when the lineup came out, they reposted the piece as a triumphant thing that we guessed Imagine Dragons right.
Yeah.
And
Are
I
you
was just like,
serious?
yeah.
Wow.
It's
I
just
don't,
ridiculous.
I don't get the Hindustan Times, so I didn't know of this at all. And I'm not on
On the
social media
internet.
per se. Tell me more about this.
Like, as music journalists, I was like, what are you guys doing? Just delete that.
Did this
Or if
have,
you don't want to
does
delete
did
it,
this
don't draw
report
attention.
have any sources or anything of that sort, or was it just pure
No,
speculation?
they said we have been told by sources, and at the end there's a small disclaimer, which I don't know if they added later or was in the original piece, but that these are not confirmed by BMS.
But I must say, right, at this point, like when you go 3 months without announcing, everyone has access to the internet. Everyone's bought tickets at this point. And at this point also, I think to add some context, people have been going for music festivals for a while. So you figure out how bookings are done. So I think Imagine Dragons coming in was like, again, the worst kept secret because they were playing in Bahrain a few days before. So everyone knew they were coming. So who's the next person?
Yeah.
As Red Hot Chili Peppers kept getting announced, at least for their Australia, they got ruled out. So I'm like, ab kaun aane wala hai, right?
Yeah, Arctic Monkeys was another name floating around, and they were also
Isn't
touring
that
around.
name still floating around?
It's still
False
floating around.
Supersonic.
And I don't think that, again, I think those are false rumors, I have to say. But yeah, so this is what happens, right? The anticipation, this has been going on for so long. And like I have sort of spoken about this before, but I think that the biggest mistake that Book My Show did was essentially feeding into that frenzy and letting those rumors fly and not doing anything to sort of at least come out and say, hey, lower your expectations. This is not what, especially after that Hindustan Times piece, you came out and like you, okay, fine. Imagine Dragons, as we all know, was a worst kept secret. Everybody knew there was one name that was definitely on the list. But the other names, I mean, like Metallica, Pearl Jam, Anuj Gupta being a Jam fan, that also sort of fed into
I'm pretty sure that's where that came from.
maybe Pearl Jam possibility,
Listen, I'm glad, and I don't know, at least those who worked on N87 in the recent years or have seen that. At least tool the hashtag. Come on, that was like something I think which did show up this time, right? At least Pearl Jam.
Okay, cool. So Peter, you were one of the first to sell your tickets after the lineup reveal. Why did you do it? What were some of the issues you foresaw? Did the lineup just not excite you?
So, okay.
Don't you want to watch AP Dhillon in Bombay?
I'll address AP Dhillon first.
Oh, no, yeah.
I was warming myself up because, again, AP Dhillon was a name that was floating. I was like, I have no idea who this is. So I listened to AP Dhillon so much on Spotify. He actually showed up as one of my most listened to artists on Spotify Wrapped. I was like, holy shit.
Wow, you went into preparation mode.
I know, right? I mean, I'll have to make a confession here. I actually put up my tweet to sell my ticket as a joke because I thought, nobody is going to buy my ticket at 6,500 for this lineup. As some people know the story, I'm going to repeat it. I went in to teach a class that I do as a guest lecturer. I put up that tweet on the way to the class. 2 hours later, I finished the class and that tweet has blown up to the extent where people are quote tweeting me to people who want to buy the ticket. And at this point, because we had bought tickets in a hurry, I had no idea if I could even transfer tickets. So here's everyone like messaging me saying, hey, can we buy tickets, blah, blah, blah. And I also was like conflicted. I was like, I don't even know when the tickets are going to come, right? Because this is still November. How am I actually going to give? And so like I had to be very careful who I sold the tickets to also, because I felt very conflicted about taking money, which when I didn't really in essence have the tickets, right? But it boiled down actually, and I think Animesh, you and I have had this chat. For me, it boiled down to two very simple things, right? Because I was like, I've bought 2 tickets, 6K each, that's 12K. If I have to buy a ticket for my son, which I again didn't think anyone would be selling their tickets, as of that date when I sold it, it was 11K. So I did a quick math. 23K is just going in tickets. If I'm going to have a couple of drinks, food and stuff like that, around 5K I'd end up spending. I couldn't justify it to myself paying 28,000 for just a weekend thing. I mean, that's money I could take and travel abroad or go on a holiday or something like that, right? I mean, I'm still that middle class guy with those values, right? For me, I cannot like fathom spending that kind of money. So yeah, I ended up selling my tickets. And again, as someone who lives not that far from Mahalakshmi, considering the figures they were throwing around, the last thing I want to do, and again, I'd taken my son to IROC, right? The last thing I wanted to do was be navigating the thousands of people with a 5-year-old in there, right? And for me, that's priority. I mean, like when it has to deal with my son whining over AP Dillon, I think I would take AP Dillon, right?
AP Dillon was whining himself. So
That's what I'm saying. I'd rather take that. I don't want the 5-year-old whining. So I just sat at home and listened to AP Dillon on Spotify.
AP Dillon's sound guy forgetting to turn the auto-tune off on his mic when he was talking was
That was lovely, man. That was my highlight of the set.
Well, there was an
That was
auto-tune
honestly,
backing track.
yeah. That was
And
honestly
then
my
the
highlight
auto-tune
of the
mic.
set. Crazy vibes. Okay, cool. Amit, did you consider selling your ticket?
no, I wasn't going to sell my ticket because, like I said, I was going to go for the experience.
Okay.
I was whether it was good, bad, I had to go and see what it was.
Bhanuj, what was your reaction to what was happening?
So I was largely like, if I get free passes, and I was fairly sure I would get free entry because BMS was quite proactive in trying to get me in. I would go, but if it didn't, I would like. I mean, Peter's laughing about 25,000 being too much. I mean, ask Magnetic Fields fans how much they spend.
Holy shit. Yeah, guys, come on. Like,
but like Lollapalooza was not particularly exciting to me even before the lineup. It was something that I would, if I could go, I would go because like Amit, like I'm interested in what's happening in the music scene, and it's a first for international festival of that scale. If I was going to go and check it out, I was not very invested in it. I was much more excited about Magnetic Fields, which I went to this year. And I was expecting a certain amount of like, this talked a big game in terms of like accessibility. A lot of that, we'll come to that later, I guess, but a lot of that didn't really get like pulled off, and I wasn't expecting the world of it. But I was really expecting a decent festival experience with acts I didn't particularly care for mostly. But, you know, it's always interesting to see acts who are at or near the top of their game in whatever genre and see what the crowd deals with it, you know. So I was more curious than excited, really. I need to see what is going on here. And the other thing is, like, not so much for me, but Nisha, my wife, grew up in town, a lot of friends. The idea of a major festival in Mahalakshmi was a little exciting.
Yeah.
Also a little terrifying, but exciting that it's happening because Bombay doesn't have a music festival of that scale.
Yeah. That was kind of the rationale for me not to sell off my tickets too. Although I brought it up a lot in conversation, it was on the top of my mind for a really long time. But then I said, hey, I was A, curious to see what it would eventually be, and B, although the lineup was terribly underwhelming for me personally, it wasn't for a lot of first time, like people who've never attended a festival before, right? So I knew I would be with a fairly excited bunch, and that tends to rub off, especially when you combine it with the power of loud music and happy people largely. So I decided to give it a shot. Okay, cool. Ticket resales were a huge hit online, right? Especially in the weeks leading up to the festival. Amit, you did a survey about this. Share the results, and were you surprised by the results?
No, the results were the most unsurprising. I was not at all surprised. But there was just so many people selling tickets, and all of like Lola India's Instagram page, like anything they posted, it was just selling tickets, selling tickets, selling tickets. And you see this a little bit for like even Weekender, but it was not to this extent. I'm a part of this other. I think Bhanuj is also. I think all of us are on it. I don't know. There's this ticket reselling WhatsApp group wherein like there was people just selling tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, let me do a little survey. And I did it across social media platforms and very common results. I mean, I think it was like a day before the festival. So I got like, I think 75 people responded or something like that. But more than 50% said that they basically were disappointed by the lineup and they bought early birds and that's why they were selling it. But it's interesting that you mentioned Mahalakshmi Racecourse as the venue because I had Post Malone and, it was such a nightmare. You expect it's going to be a nightmare getting out of any venue because everybody's leaving at the same time. Post Malone was the first gig that I remember. Well, it's actually technically the Zomato Feeding India concert, but like I remember going there. I've never had such a hard time actually trying to get to a venue. Everybody I know had to sort of get down. We had to get down at opposite Palladium and walk like half an hour to, and then there's another big like from the box office to where this gig was. It wasn't as big as Lola, so you had to walk much more to finally get there. It was, and then you had to do the same thing when you went back. So one of the second most responses, I mean, you get like over 50% early bird, didn't like the lineup. Second biggest reason was, which a much tinier sort of percentage was, I bought extras for friends and they can't make it. And various people had different reasons. Somebody had fallen sick, somebody had gone into an accident, things like that. And then the third biggest reason was that I went to Post Malone and it was such a nightmare and I didn't want to repeat that.
Okay.
And actually, like I think 5 or 6 people, I mean, this is only 75 people, but like 5 or 6 people said that. So that venue being a deterrent, I think, is another thing, right? At the same time, yeah, I mean, amazing. I used to live like 5 minutes from Mahalakshmi. I would have had it would have been easy for me to get there, like 5 minutes. I would have walked. But again, it was like, so when I heard, I was like, oh, why are they doing this as the race course when this is going to be, you just did, you know how bad it's going to be. But like you said, I think that's the only open ground, the largest open ground that we have. I think they have many other options. But I mean, I know they spent, somebody told me that, I don't know this figure, some 7,500 trucks removing debris and garbage from the venue.
I'm not surprised.
To make it suitable for, for a concert. Quite crazy that we basically don't have venues,
Yeah, the no venue thing is a conversation for I don't know when.
I was told they sent in a janitorial team to sweep up the carpets the night before. And one of my friends who works there was like, where do you think the dust is going to go?
Of course, yeah.
It's not going to Thane. It's going to go up and come back down.
Yeah.
But, I'm so glad you brought up that point, Amit, right? Because I remember when the feeding, so I think I had already sold off my tickets. And for me, that was my first confirmation that when everyone went for that Post Malone gig, I was like, wow. And let's be honest, I practically pass by Mahalakshmi Racecourse on a regular basis. So just the clusterfuck that it's become, right? Accessibility was not surprising to me. And like, at the end of the day, like, again, for me, I think this is the change that's happened in the last 10 odd years that I've been going to festivals, right? I don't enjoy going to festivals alone anymore, right? And first of all, I'd love to experience that with my wife, with my son. So that becomes important. But also then I realized, even if I go to this festival alone, this lineup, who am I going to meet who actually knows? I mean, literally 3 of you would be the other people I would hang out with if I went alone.
Everybody was there. Like,
pretty much, yeah.
But you couldn't find them.
Yeah, we were all doing our own thing.
Like, I mean, I don't think I didn't meet you, Bhanuj, at all.
No, because I stopped trying to find people because there was no network.
Yeah.
So it was like, if we were lucky, and I was standing behind the sound console, like around the sound console for most sets. Because Nisha also doesn't like packed crowds, but also there was nobody I wanted to get up front for, really. It wasn't that exciting a line.
True. Okay, cool. So let's cut to a few months later, to last week, in fact, 28th and 29th Jan 2023. Lola India goes live, and at the end of it, it seems to be a mixed bag at the moment, right? Media reports peg 60,000 attendees across both the days. That's a very strong number. Quick aside, can anyone verify if that makes Lola the most attended festival or concert in India?
I think multi-genre it is, because I don't know, something like a Sunburn claims like 40,000 people a day, over a lakh across 3 days. So Lola would not be, but I think multi-genre it was. And like, I think that some people also feel that they were being conservative with their estimates, because I heard like people saying, oh, there's 40,000 people here, there's 45,000 people here. I mean, I don't know. It's very
I
hard to
think
make.
the 40,000 number is because of AP Dillon, who said during his set that, "Arey, hum 40,000 jan yahan pe," or something of that sort. Yeah. He did
Was
make it a
this in
point
his
to mention
auto-tune
that.
voice?
Yeah, it was. That was magical.
I'm not sure it was 60,000, but it was such a big space that's really hard to get a proper grasp on the number, really.
I think that 30,000, I mean, considering that it's an official Book My Show number is over 30,000. And if usually you hear the opposite. You will hear like something, there's like 1,000 people here. And then you see the press release say 30,000 people attended this gig. This is the first case where it's actually the opposite, where the crowd estimates were like, I think these are about 40, 45. And then they come up with 30. And I actually spoke to them. I said, this is kind of weird. Like, how come you're saying 30,000? And they said, there was a lot of crew for this festival. I'm guessing there was a fair amount of guest lists also. Artists, they had all these big artist ensembles, people sort of having 10-member bands, and they must be having their guest lists. And
guest lists were actually quite restricted.
Yeah.
Some of my friends couldn't get their like brothers or partners in because each act had like 3 or 4.
Oh, okay.
So if it was a multi-member act, then you didn't have a lot of guests.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, it was, I guess they were trying to, so that's the reason why they didn't want to like quote higher. So, I mean, I think 30.
The official number is 30,000 for each day?
Over 30, no, over 60,000 each day. I think general consensus is that day one probably had more people. Again, because
that seems to be the feel.
And Imagine Dragons, but I think, but that's it. And it would be the largest multi-genre festival in India so far.
I mean, that's not counting, say, traditional festivals. Like I've been to a bowl festival in Joydev, which is like easily 100,000, and that's music. That's multiple
really we're not talking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Coming back, Mahalakshmi Racecourse turned into a giant festival park. 3 of us were there. Take us through your experience and let's talk music first, right? Bhanuj, who did you watch? Who did you enjoy? What was your highlight? What wasn't? Purely talking about the music acts at the moment.
So the highlight was The Strokes.
Okay.
I missed a lot of the early Indian acts that I wanted to see because coming from Andheri East to Mahalakshmi is a mess. But yeah, I mean, Imagine Dragons was very meh, but I'm not a big fan of their music. They're very good musicians. Production is great, but it's so formulaic, right?
Yeah.
It's like Muse, but poppier and shittier. So I really didn't enjoy that.
Somebody told me Imagine Dragons is a rock band for children.
Yes, exactly. Greta Van Fleet, I really don't like their sound, but they were on it performance-wise. They did quite well. House of Hashbase I was excited about, but the sound was off. I didn't really enjoy the sound there. Dillo I was kind of excited about. I've been trying to interview him for like a year. He doesn't do interviews. So I was just like, I want to see. His set was quite disappointing.
Okay.
And on day 2, I was really only there to see the Strokes. I saw Jackson Wang. It was very interesting to see the way the crowd responded to him because I have very ambivalent feelings towards K-pop. Nisha loves it. And we always have this debate. But it was interesting to see. But yeah, really only like walked away happy to have seen the Strokes.
Okay, cool. Personally, for me, on day 1, don't really enjoy their music. I'm not a huge fan or anything of that sort, but Greta Van Fleet's performance really killed it. I think that was a highlight for almost everyone who was able to hear that set. I surprisingly thoroughly enjoyed Zoo for the little odd time that I managed to catch that. That was about it. And on day 2, loved seeing how Divine can control such a huge crowd. On Twitter somewhere I read that AP Dillon may have the charisma, but Divine owns Bombay. And that rang true because Divine's set was the only set that I saw literally everyone who was there. That's not just the paying attendees, but even the bouncers, the security team, the guys who took care of garbage, the people at the water tanks, etc., vibing with his music. And that is hats off, man. That was probably it for me. Amit, what about you?
So for me, yeah, I think the highlights were the Strokes, Imagine Dragons, and the Wombats. I mean, like, yeah, Imagine Dragons. My are for kids. I know my 10-year-old niece said take videos for me, and I happily took them for her. And I knew that they would put on a good show.
Yeah, it was a good show. I'll give them that.
And I wanted to see that. I'm fairly blind, so I like seeing things from the fun. So I miss stuff to be a little more upfront for both Strokes and Imagine Dragons. Strokes was just like this party, everything you were expecting it to be, and that laser light show. I wish the stage wasn't so dark, but and the Wombats were just like really fun and great. So I think these three were from the beginning. They were like on what excited me about the lineup, and that's what I enjoyed the most. And I think. Yeah, like you said, I think it was really kind of heartening to see people show up in such numbers for the Indian acts, whether it was Divine, whether it was Prateek, both, I think, put on good sets, and made an effort, and it showed,
And simultaneously.
Yeah, and
simultaneously.
So I tried to do a little bit of both. And yeah, it was just like, that was the best part for me, seeing Indian acts garner that kind of audience.
Yeah.
And going back,
they didn't seem amiss at this kind of a festival.
Amiss in the sense?
Amiss, like they didn't seem out of place.
Yeah,
everyone did their part really well.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of them, this was the biggest stage that they've ever played. It's sad that some of them didn't, like, especially the ones that played the earlier sets, perhaps didn't get the audiences that they deserve. But it just in terms of the size of the stage, the scale of the production, this was definitely the largest gig of their career so far. And that some of them were able to hold it together. I mean, honestly, I enjoyed everything I saw except for AP. I mean, it was to say, and the one, the universal sort of review for his performance was underwhelming. And it's surprising. Like everybody else who I saw, I didn't not like what I didn't dislike anything else. And I yeah, there were some sound issues and some sets, but that wasn't the artist's fault. That was just, it was out of their control. And I think everybody put on a good show except for him. And I think that's what sucks and stands out. And yeah, even I've been trying to get an interview from him, but I don't think I'm getting one anymore.
There's one more act I really enjoyed, but I can't really say I watched them because I spent 45 minutes trying to get a beer while Japanese breakfast was playing. And it was at the Budweiser bar next to the stage. Literally, I got into line just when their set was starting. And by the time I got out of the line, they were over.
Right,
and I had warm beer. I had warm beer. It was a bad start.
Let's talk about the amenities, the hygiene, the F&B, the culture, the festival experience, everything apart from the music. Hits and misses. Bhanuj.
I'm sure Amit will also make this point. In terms of the scale, they were trying for something quite big. So I'm willing to give them some leeway. But I feel like for a lot of things, they got to about 80% there. They got the basics in place. But that last 20%, the attention to care and detail, that makes a festival experience special. That makes you feel like a part of this space, part of this community. I want to come back. That was largely missing. The bars were awful. And not just once. Like this was throughout. Second day, we decided only really to catch the headliners and the undercard. So we got in at around 7:30. We went to the first bar after the entrance. At 7:30 they were out of everything except whiskey.
Wow. Okay.
We topped up this thing online, and then we had to go. We waited in line, and then we were at the front of the line. They told us you have to go activate it. A lot of other people had like the walking was a pain, but that's okay. The security, the police. On the second day when I was walking in. Opposite the box office, I saw 3 or 4 cops surrounding a guy. I'm sure he must have been either misbehaving or trying to get in, but they were caning him.
Okay.
That is not an experience. That is not a sight I want to see when I'm walking into a music festival. There were complaints from people about, there was one complaint about someone who was androgynous. And so, first of all, why do you have he?
Yeah, that was such a blunder.
But then segregating by visible gender, right?
Yeah.
And then apparently one person complained that they had to undress because they looked masked, and they were trying to get into they were going through the female line. There was an all-gender washroom. I saw a thread about it, so then I went and took a photo. The all-gender washroom was 2 porta potties that were locked. You couldn't use them. One of my friends brought a disabled friend in a wheelchair, and he was like, the team was one person and they abandoned them in the middle of the field when everyone was leaving. They were just stuck there.
And this is despite having wheelchair access ramps
I mean,
as
first
well
of
as
all, that is
areas
not a
to watch them, right?
wheelchair access ramp is fine, but that is not a wheelchair accessible ground.
Yeah.
So like you can get them there and park them there, but there's anything else was not taken care of. So I think they really like messed up on a lot of the smaller things that are just as important for me as a festival goer than a lot of other things. Like the bar thing, for example. I remember I went to Primavera last year, and day one their bars were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
People were standing in line for an hour. The bartenders were quite incompetent. Water was not accessible. Even 8 months down, last month I read a piece that was using that as an example of how bad festivals can get. So Lollapalooza has the same thing. I think they should really be held to account for that. This is not something that should happen at a bar. They did get the water thing right.
Yeah,
But
the
this is not
water thing
something that
was a
should
huge
happen at a
win.
festival. If you're
Mhm.
gonna wait 45 minutes for a bar, and like, I mean that's in the sun, in the heat. At least Primavera was largely a night festival.
For what it's worth, I know that they were listening because on the first night, while exiting, the dust being kicked around by walking on the field was huge. And then the second night, everything was watered down so that it wouldn't kick up as much. So clearly somebody was there who was reviewing real time. Maybe divisional heads or however you organize hierarchy in this thing to manage different things. It didn't happen in that way. Amit, how happy were you with the overall experience?
Just echoing what you both said, I think when you looked at this is what I felt overall while there, right? While I was in front of a stage, I could have been anywhere. I could have been at the National Music Festival in front of the stage. The minute I turned around, I was at just any other Indian music festival. And I think that's the big difference when people talk about, Lollapalooza and the expectations beyond the lineup, just beyond the lineup. If this is an international quality experience, for me personally, and maybe we'll get to this later, I can understand the restrictions and the challenges they had when it came to the lineup.
Yeah.
In terms of programming certain acts. But just in terms of the experience, you do expect something of an international standard because, again, ticket prices were higher than your average Indian festival, but they were not, so they were not as expensive as an international music festival, right? You're not paying equivalent prices because they just possibly couldn't do that. So, yeah, so certain things they promised, I don't think were completely executed. For instance, there was a promise of sign language interpreters. I couldn't see them. Apparently, they were there.
I think they were there for Japanese breakfast. That's about it, right?
And the Yellow Diary.
Oh, and the Yellow Diary. Yeah.
Very clearly, Yellow Diaries I could see very clearly, but they were supposedly there for Imagine Dragons and they were there for the Strokes, but I couldn't see them. I mean, I don't know. And I was fairly upfront, but I would take their word for it. Again, the whole tap thing, saying that, tap up in advance so that you can save time, but then you get there, you have to stand
you're not really saving time. Yeah.
Purpose. The free water thing was great. Initially, when I saw that, I was like, okay, what's so great? I mean, everybody should be giving free water these days. But the number of water stations they had was definitely much larger than any other festival that I've seen. I think that was great.
Yeah.
I heard things that they ran out of water on the loose. So, which is again,
that I can kind of verify that
and
because
thing, I didn't drink at all because I was like, I will try and drink after. Because I'm not going to waste much time. But then, of course, the bar shut at 10. That would have been like a permission.
Earlier,
yeah.
On day 2 during the Strokes, we were trying to get a drink at 9, and most of the bars were either shut or out of anything. One bar had only Baileys.
Wow.
So that's not great. I mean, to have the bars, shut so early. A lot of people also had an issue with the layout. And when I say the layout, it's not because they had such large stages, so they needed to have these distances between stages.
Yeah.
And I've also been to Primavera, and I do recall sort of the long walk between stages, which
but
I think that's understandable.
That's understandable.
But I think what also I would have liked to see more stuff. I think like the little stuff that they did was great. It all looked great. Like the team that put together the installation.
The visual identity, branding, etc. were pretty much on point.
Yeah, they were on point, but they were so spaced out that you couldn't really experience it. You didn't have that. I mean, I suppose it's a bit of a challenge, right? When you go to a Weekender, at least in the early days of Weekender, where everything didn't have a logo on it, there was a variety of experiences.
Shots fired, Amit.
That you could,
No,
I
I actually
remember
walked away with a much higher appreciation for what OML had managed in the first few editions of Weekender. They
Yeah, the
really
first
got
year,
a
the
lot of the
first year and
small
the second
details
year were
right.
great.
Even after, even when it became bigger and the crowds made it harder, there was a certain standard of experience that they kind of maintained for quite a while, till I was allowed in at least.
Is that a factor of just being able, like, not knowing that you're going to be drawing a lower crowd? Like when you're talking about even say a 30 to 40,000 crowd.
yeah. So that makes a big difference, right? Because there's, like I said, it's not spaced out, spaced out, so you can have the intimacy of experiences. So I think that's something that maybe Lola should be a little more conscious of the next time. Like somebody told me that, where is the legacy of Lola reflected in this thing? And it could be small things like you had like a pop-up, whatever, for something else or some brand. You could have done a pop-up Lola museum. I mean, half the people there, they had no clue about the history of this festival.
Correct.
And you could have just done some small installations where you had like, you could have had, they could have made a joke out of this, like had cutouts of like Metallica, RSCP, and people would take selfies with it, like they
Hey,
did at like,
for what it's worth, Farhad
Farhad
Walia did the same.
IROC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or they could have done like how, in that hip hop museum, they had the Spotify Rap 91 gig. Just a little like Lola something, do something and like celebrate the legacy of it, and have,
Yeah.
I think was a bit missing. So I think in terms of the experience, there was a lot of things they could have done. But again, it's a huge challenge putting together something like this. You have to commend them for putting it off, and like I said, I think I had a good time. The only thing is that I would say that like I said, I'm going with in this age with like so many word reviews, and my 3-word review of Lola was supersized Weekender. Because like,
But
Okay.
I mean,
Wait, 1 second. Bhanuj, you vociferously shook your head at a point.
So
What?
there's only like two things that I disagree with on Amit, where he said when he turns around, looks like an Indian festival. But an Indian festival in 2023 does not have 45-minute waits at bars. That is something that used to happen, but it is not a standard that even Indian festivals can escape, like can get away with at this point. And the second thing is, I don't think you have to hand it to them. I understand why Amit's saying that because he is focused on the music industry business aspect of it. But if you are an attendee, you don't have to hand them anything. If your experience
exactly.
wasn't
I
good,
agree.
your
Yeah.
experience wasn't good. That's really it.
I agree.
Which is the thing I have to keep reminding myself as a music journalist, because when we're on insiders, we know what's happening behind the scenes. And to a certain extent, yes, you shouldn't have unrealistic expectations. You shouldn't say like, why is this not Primavera Sound or why is this not Reading Festival? But you shouldn't be also kind of making excuses for them because you know what they went through, because that doesn't actually matter to the
I'm
experience.
not making excuses for them. I'm also going by what my prior experiences have been and other festivals, and it's not, on the basis of that, I think that it was, at least on some levels, like we've said, I mean, we don't necessarily give them full points on the experience part of it, but I think from the stage production part of it, yeah, I mean, I think it was great.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I knew that it wouldn't be a subpar experience because the organizers, they have that history. They wouldn't like it. It'll not be in their DNA to put up something that's absolutely shit. Absolutely. And pun on the word DNA there.
Oh my God, there's just so many inside jokes.
Okay, cool.
My apologies to anyone who's not been to a festival in the last 3 years.
Also, a certain your young listeners may not necessarily understand that reference.
100,000 points for anyone who guesses that. Okay, cool. Peter, did you feel any sense of FOMO? Or did you pat yourself on the back and just validate your assumptions and say, good move, Peter. I knew this was happen. Good move. What lovely foresight.
So the thing is, I couldn't have FOMO because there was nothing to have FOMO about. Nobody could post anything, right? So I just took a lovely nap on Saturday, enjoyed myself, had a great lunch, and I was like, where the fuck are the updates? Like, why is nobody posting? I mean, like, I wanted to jump in when Amit was talking about it. I mean, like, as someone who worked in marketing, who's worked actually on a festival, unfortunately, everyone is just looking for the gram right now, right? Like all those installations are only so, but what is the point of doing all of that if someone cannot post about it and nobody can kind of see it? It's just like futile to me, right? And I just sat at home and I was like, and then I started seeing people posting stuff on Twitter, right? Not going to repeat, but it's stuff like Bhanuj talked about. And what really shocked me was that, guys, you have someone posting about it. If you've not fixed it on the second day,
Yeah.
why the fuck aren't you doing your job? Because let's be honest, if whether we know these people or not, at the end of the day, if you're paying 7,000, 10,000, some people, I hope they've not paid 11, 12,000, you're looking for a value for that, right? So if you can't do your job, then, I mean, like, it's just some of the basic stuff that you talked about. Like, lose, come on. You've been doing festivals in India for 10, 12 years and you can't get loose, right? That's like the very basics, right? So, like, I think we should get them more for that than why you didn't get Pearl Jam down, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
is,
I totally agree. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think you can fault them for the eventual lineup so much as you can for not
yeah,
having
yeah.
basics.
I mean, like,
covered.
see, and I'll be honest, right? Like, because, and I'm going back to the thing about people having experience at Mahalakshmi, right? I was very happy when I saw everyone because I was like, dude, this is a logistical nightmare. If you're going to spend like, and I literally,
And their solution was also hilarious, right? So it was, what do we do? Okay, this is a traffic nightmare. No parking.
Don't get
Yeah.
cars.
Any parking. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
that was the solution. And then
at
there
the-
was, you
So
know,
the smarter people, okay, this is me tooting my own horn, but what I ended up doing on the second day was go to Atria Mall, park my car there, and then walk down. I mean,
So I booked, there's this app called Park Plus. For both days, I booked a parking spot that was near Mahalakshmi station.
okay,
So I went parked there because when I was leaving, I didn't want to have to deal with the train. And then I live in Andheri East. So even the train, after that, is still a 45-minute
yeah.
journey. So I did that and that worked out quite well.
But one of the things I must like the Bombay crowd, I love them because they do what they're told. I've experienced it at IROC, at the infamous Gateway IROC. I've experienced it at different other concerts, etc. You tell them that, hey, parking wasn't available. The amount of people who have never seen or talk about trains and taking trains on that day was great. So good step. They tried to do it well. They tried to find a logical solution for it.
Also, the thing is, they announced it well in advance.
Yeah.
I think that's why you have to give them credit that they did announce it well in advance. That there's not going to be parking. Take the train. I took the train. I didn't have any problems either way. It was fairly comfortable. In fact, it was more comfortable on the way back because obviously on the way in there were like regular people taking the train. So.
Did anyone use the drink coupon that they gave you?
I went up to it, but by the time I'd gone up to it, which was day one around 4 p.m., everything was already sold out.
So what was that coupon going to give you? As in,
One free drink.
One free 30-minute distraction.
One free 30-minute wait.
But I mean, let's go back to that, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, intention is great. Get people to take the train, give them an incentive of a drink. But what are they going to do when they get that drink coupon? Like, hold it 1 year later and say, hey, I went to Lola and I got this shitty coupon.
Let's try that.
One other thing is the poor VIP guys. Anybody who paid for VIP. One of my friends went, but he got a free VIP pass. He was like, there's a 30-minute wait to get a drink at the VIP also.
Wow.
And then you're stuck on this very inconveniently placed. So he spent most of his time in general audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
We should talk about the VIP because that was so strange. It was like in the middle of like nowhere pretty much. And you
so how much did VIPs pay?
You couldn't see anything. Like, I think the idea was that you could see all the stages, but it was so far you probably couldn't see anything. So if you paid for a VIP pass, then you would just essentially like get into the general anyway.
And then there was that Nexa Lounge, which is people who they had a bar backstage.
Okay.
For VVIPs.
Okay.
With the entrance right next to the stage. So I heard one drunk patron almost made it on the stage for Greta Van Fleet because they took a wrong turn.
Wow.
So
Superb.
I mean, But you also had drunk VIP fans wandering around in the production area backstage. So, like you said, nobody could post, right? They tried to make things in other ways a lot more convenient for influencers. All of these guys were there. They could take photos from like the pit or videos from the pit to the side,
Yeah,
but
sizable
nobody
pit
could
area.
post it.
Yeah.
So, what was the point? They made it very influencer friendly. There were those carts,
Yeah,
so you could
correct.
avoid the walk. I think some brand had chartered a bus for influencers.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of these things, but then nobody could post. So I was just like, what? Why did you make it such an influencer friendly festival if the influencers then can't do anything with it?
Okay, cool. Let's take a quick back step here. I also wanted to get a first time festival goer as part of this chat, but yeah, we've all been, so the four of us, we've all been in the scene and have experienced various aspects of it to a degree. We are all insiders at various levels. Help me answer this. Did Lolla live up to a first timers expectations from a music festival? Any anecdotal data? I'll tell you mine in this aspect. I went with a bunch of first time festival goers, and more or less, I think everybody enjoyed, especially because a few of them got to see acts they've always wanted to watch. So that was one answer. But other than that, with this kind of scale, I think for them it was a new experience which they've never been to before. There were more hits than misses by far, and what that means is, apart from the obvious screw ups, which is data or cellular networks and
Lose.
shit, I'm forgetting. Yeah, the lose and basically just walking around accessing it, etc. But apart from that, people returned entertained, people returned well fed, and because they were with friends, they all had a good time. Eventually, all of that just helped make it happen. What about you guys? Any anecdotal data on that front?
None of my friends were really first time attendees. We're old people now. Our friends are experienced. But like the vibe I got, I saw people really enjoying, say, Jackson Wang.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people who were really excited about being able to see people up close. So in that sense, yes, for a first timer, it was a pretty good experience, I think. But I will caveat that with we thought DNA organizing Man Maiden was also amazing. We know better now. You know, so again, like for people who are younger than 30, you may not get that reference, but go look it up. Go look up DNA and Metallica for.
Oh man, that's nightmare fuel.
Hashtag never forget.
So yeah, I think it was definitely not that festival, like that concert. It was quite well done. A lot of these things are things that we know to look for.
Exactly. Yeah.
We know what makes a festival thing tick.
Okay,
But,
so cool.
Yeah.
But man,
I mean, it lived up to expectations for first timers, but
so the big question: did the reality of Lolla India meet up to your expectations?
Okay, I'll answer your question about first timers though. So I didn't go with any first timers, but that infamous ticket reselling group, I will reference that. And I could tell that there were many first timers there because they had really funny questions like, how do you take this wristband off? And what, you shower with it? And somebody cut off their wristband and tried to staple it. And then Nikhil Udupa, who's also on this group and was part of the team that worked on Lolla, was like, I urge you not to do any of these things because you will not get in if you take off your wristband and staple it and try to get back in. So you could tell there were a lot of people who were, but then those same people who were whining about the lineup were talking about how great a time they had. And also, I could see that on day one, the number of people wanting to buy tickets was actually more than the number of people selling tickets. So obviously some sort of word of mouth has gone, and people have had a good time. And you had those up to the week, up to the festival was like, I'm going to sell my ticket. But then the weekend of the festival, you had so many people wanting to buy then, because I suppose maybe it was FOMO, maybe it was, people hearing from their friends. So I think from a first timer's perspective, definitely it was a successful event. It was, I think most people had a good time. I always find that there's a big difference. Like when I reference that Post Malone thing is that the walk back is always easier than the walk to the festival, right? Because you're on that high, you're on that concert high, and you don't care about, it just sort of, it's fine. We've had to do that, MMRDA crowd, not being able to get any transport out of there, going through all those gigs you mentioned, Iron Maiden, whatever, just sort of, at the end of the day, what matters? It's the performance, and if the act puts on a good performance, your journey back home is going to be that much easier, no matter how much you have to walk. And I think the majority of people who came to Lolla, I think they all went home relatively happy, and I think they're definitely for first timers. And look at it this way, for first timers, now it's only going to get better from this. Like, took you 1 hour to get a drink. Next festival is going to take you 30 minutes.
Okay. Did the reality of Lola live up to your expectations, Bhanuj?
My expectations were low, and it didn't live up to them really.
Wow. Okay. Amit, what about you?
I would say it lived up to my expectations. I would say 60, 70%, I guess.
Yeah,
60,
even I'll go with a safe 6 or 7 out of 10 to answer that question.
I mean, if I was to give a review, one word review, then it was meh. It wasn't terrible by any standards, but it was also nothing that really made me think, oh, this is fun. I enjoyed it, apart from the stroke set. But the stroke set, like you're saying, when you're walking out, it's fun. And then when you're walking out and then you see a cop with a raised cane running at people and shouting at them in Marathi, swearing at them in Marathi for stepping out of line. That's not, and I understand that police is not something that they can directly control.
Uh-huh.
But that is still not a good, aftertaste for the festival. I haven't seen that happen in a while. Of course, we haven't had a festival in Bombay in a while. Mumbai police also probably doesn't know how to deal with this. But it was like, that also starts the taste a little bit.
When Sunburn happens, I mean, those Sunburn Arena concerts happen and you have 40,000 people coming to watch like Hardwell or whoever it is. I mean, I would imagine that they do have to deal with it on a regular basis.
Yeah, actually, that's also true. Yeah.
Okay. Finally, Lola 23 ended with an announcement of sorts for Lola 24. Will you guys attend Lola 24? What will make you attend? What will not make you attend? What do you hope improves? Peter, let's start with you. Will you attend Lola 24? Will you fork up the cash?
Fuck no. No way. I'll find a way to make
What will make you fork up the cash?
I don't know, dude. I mean, like, considering all of this and just considering the fact that, like, I'll be honest also, by the way, I didn't add this. But part of the reason why I sold my Lola tickets is because I was taking that money and going to probably watch Red Hot Chili Peppers in Singapore. And then I figured out that my son wouldn't be allowed for that concert. So I was like, okay. But the fact is, at the end of the day, if you're going to charge this amount of money, I might as well just add slightly more to it and watch a festival abroad, right? Or go watch a standalone show abroad. I mean,
watch a festival abroad with that money. I don't think you can. You'd probably be able to do a gig, but probably
so
not.
That's the thing, right? Like, again, it's also me realizing that I don't want to be around so many thousands of people, right? Like, I'd rather just go to a standalone show and enjoy that, soak in that experience, do something around in that city, wherever it is, right? And
so to sum up what you're saying, I think, and this is just because we talk to each other so much, the only thing that will make you want to go for Lola 24 would be an act that you really want to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, Ozzy retired, right? So now we can't expect Ozzy to come and play. But Metallica is not retiring anytime soon. So,
okay,
for all the bitching that we've done, please come Metallica to India.
Hey, will they program them for Lola next year?
Okay. Bhanuj, what about you? Lola 24, will we see you there?
Most likely, but I won't be paying for tickets. So actually, not most likely after this podcast. But like, there's a few things. Like, I would like. It's not like I think we skipped over the lineup a bit, but I would like a lineup that is better curated.
For nothing.
No, so I will probably go to see how they improve, to see how things happen, and to see how this develops, because I want to see whether this develops into a community, whether these first-time festival attendees are going to go to clubs and gigs and catch the Indian acts they saw. Whether there is a lot of people, I think a lot of people in the music industry have high hopes for what this could start. I personally am quite wary of the idea of Ticketmaster coming in, because there's a lot of practices that they bring in that a lot of independent artists will eventually not be happy with. But, I want to see how this develops. I want to see how they respond to the criticism. And I want to see if they can actually live up to the sort of standard that is expected of a major international music festival.
Okay. So that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Lollapalooza experience. Now, as an offshoot to the Lollapalooza experience comes the talk about the lineup, the quintessential lineup debate that's been taking seen Twitter of sorts by storm.
That
Maybe
even exists anymore.
already cool. What's it with lineups as such? What is the problem here, Peter? You want to articulate it?
Lolla is a clear indication to all future organizers: don't try to sell tickets unless you have a lineup that you can announce. Weekender has been doing it for like so long, and let's be honest, when you're selling tickets at twice the price of Weekender, I mean, like Weekender tickets go at like 2K.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
that's
not
when
twice the price because it's Weekender. It's like I think 2.5 or something like that. They
yeah,
start.
Yeah.
yeah. So like, and again, you know for a fact, right? I mean, I know this because again I worked on Weekender, but that was a decade ago. Lots of things have changed since then. But I think like that's a clear indication you cannot sell tickets before a lineup is announced. People are far more aware, right? I mean, like the fact that people want, and if you do, then be prepared for the backlash that you get, right? You can't have both ways, right?
Okay.
But the second thing also is that, let's be honest, we are consumers or customers at the end of the day. You always want a Metallica. You always will have someone wanting Tool, Black Sabbath. I don't know. Someone may even say, why is Pink Floyd not touring India, right? You're going to have those kind of people also. But I think there's always going to be that. And at the end of the day, if you're looking at it as, hey, this is, we're providing a service, then I would actually, if I was on the organizer's side, I'd be kind of in tune to saying who is making the most amount of chatter, kind of marrying that with the Spotify data, because now a lot of the people not looking at how many Instagram followers a certain act has, right? Because I suspect that's what's happening with Indian acts also. But with the Indian acts, I do not give any this to organizers, man. Like how many times is Bloodywood going to play? Like at some point, Bloodywood will play probably each and every festival in India more times than they'll tour US, I think.
And I think at this point you can put Diplo and Cigarettes After Sex as Indian acts also.
We make fun of Megadeth for the number of times they played. We make fun of so many other international acts, right? But I think with the actual Indian acts, you're not creating, the discovery. And I think Amit, Bhanuj, I'm sure Animesh also, because you played at the initial N87 Weekender. The whole allure of N87 Weekender would be you walk across and you'd actually discover an act and then you'd kind of follow them, right? We all know at least 2 to 3 acts. I'm not saying that Lollapalooza has to do it, but I just feel that any festival at this point should be doing that, because how else are you going to create that next generation? Who's going to play the 5th edition of the festival if you're going to have the same people come across, right?
Yeah, so
And
I
I
want
think
to sort of slightly counter that, but I'll let you finish. What?
no, so I mean that's what I say. I mean, I just feel that Supersonic has announced their lineup. How different is the Supersonic lineup Indian act to Lollapalooza, right? And the fact that they were booked much apart.
Yeah, because Lolla had a pre-clause. You couldn't play 1 month before, but there was nothing to stop you from playing 1 month after or even a week after, because you're seeing some acts perform. But yeah, I'd counter that with saying that, Weekender this year had a lot of new acts. A lot of new acts, a lot of pop acts, a lot of female singer-songwriters, which you don't see so much at any other festival. And they got backlash. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So people and Weekender, because, they did the obvious lineup and they came back in March. So for November, they took a conscious decision, we're not going to repeat anyone. So they've kind of sort of put themselves in a corner. But again, Weekender, new acts, not people, again, backlash. What is this lineup? I'm selling my ticket, So like I said, so it's a double-edged sword. That said, I remember, 10 years ago, there was this whole thing that we don't have headliners. We don't have any headliners in India. I have done another big Google Sheet research document where I have tracked lineups across like almost 50 festivals. And I sort of got the I put together a list of who's been most booked this festival season. And of course, we all know who those acts are. Bloodywood, like you said, people like Yellow Diary,
F-16s, I'm guessing.
Parvaz, When Chai Met Toast,
Oh, yeah.
Taba Chake, who's played a lot of festivals in the Northeast. And so you actually have some guys who are now today's headliners, right? So there was this big question 10 years ago, and now there was this big question today, when we're saying why are the same acts getting repeated. It takes time. It takes time to build these acts. And yes, festivals are playing safe. I don't know whether they're playing safe because they're all coming back after this 3-year gap. They're booking similar acts. But look, that's the top of the bill. And then you have the people who are playing the afternoon slots. Let's not ignore the early slots. And who are you going to put on those early slots? You're only going to have to put like upcoming acts. And, I think that essentially we have to look at it this way, that yes, we need to be a little bit more, a little more adventurous with the down the bill, even if you're playing safe at the top of the bill, right? Because inevitably, if you would do a top of the bill, nowadays a lot of festivals, not every festival is going to have like an international act topping the bill, right? Sometimes you have like an Indian act topping the bill, and then your choice is between catching the international act or being a diehard or a hardcore fan of a Divine or somebody like that, and then making that conscious choice to go there. So I think that as long as that keeps happening, as long as people are imaginative and adventurous and creative with the lowest, going down the bill, I think we're fine. I think audiences also need to, and coming to festivals, I mean, I also feel that, look, festivals are where people go to watch. There are so many people who don't necessarily come for the music. They come for the vibe. So a lot of them, early birds, maybe they don't even care about the lineup. Maybe they're coming there just because they want to have a good time. And
that is the point of the early bird ticket.
And they don't go to regular gigs. They won't come to an anti-social to watch that same act, but they'll go to a festival to watch that. And, think about it, even bands themselves, how often do you see other musicians at your regular anti-gig? You never see them, but you see them all at festivals. I don't know what it is.
That's so true.
That's point well taken. Yeah.
So then I have a very important question. I think let's start with you, Bhanuj. And I think you've been at least attending festivals for quite some time in India. Of course, you brought up the DNA thing. And the big question really, which I think is going to get all of us chimed in, is does the international acts that come to India, I mean, are we getting them past their prime? And are we okay with it just because there are not any much gigs happening?
I'll come to that. But first, I did want to ask.
Go.
So there's a few things, like a lot of it is responding to what you guys said. Like you said, festivals shouldn't sell tickets before lineups are announced. I disagree.
I think a lot of festivals know that I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that fact. I don't think there should be such a huge gap.
No, I think the thing is you have to build trust before you
exactly. You have to build trust.
Field sells out before the lineup is out at all. I mean, that's a small thing, but because I know, eyes blind, I will have a good time. I will experience some other things. The other thing is like ticket prices, yes, 10,000, say 100 euros is less than, say, an international festival like Primavera, which is 250 euros. But that 250 euros got me 4 days of music with 100 bands. So, I think given the number of acts and the sort of experience, it was a little bit less, but kind of on par with what you would pay internationally. Yes, you would pay $100 or £100 for Imagine Dragons as a solo gig, but you would pay 150 for a festival with this much lineup. So I don't think they should get too much of an excuse for the cost. My problem with the lineup was not that they didn't get a Metallica, they didn't get a massive act. My problem was that it seemed like a very mishmash of things. It was a very it seemed like someone had dug through a lot of Instagram numbers, and
it seemed like it wasn't done by a fan, but by machine.
It's like algorithmically generated. Who gets the most reels? Who's popular on TikTok? The undercard was what was really disappointing. Imagine Dragons and the Strokes were both pretty good headliners for a festival in India. I have no problems with either of them. I mean, I don't like Imagine Dragons as a band, but otherwise I'm fine with it. It was the undercard that was really disappointing. It was very much like, I mean, what is the target audience for this? I admit that all of us are kind of old and maybe not the target audience, but they're also charging 10,000 rupees a ticket. It's not 18 euros, unless you're only targeting South Bombay, right? So there was nothing exciting. Discovery is an important aspect of music festivals that wasn't there for Indian or international acts. None of these acts were acts that, I walked away thinking, oh, I have discovered a new sound or a new experience in music or anything.
The
like
only
that.
one who did that for me was Zoo, and that's because it's so different from what I listen to on a daily basis.
I've heard lots of good stuff about Maidon.
Oh yeah, I caught like 5 minutes of that set, and that was banging.
Yeah, I have to sort of like partially
prodigy energy.
There was, how many, like if you look at the average audience that came for this festival, how many people had heard of Japanese breakfast? And I think that was for some people quite an interesting slot. I do agree that probably like every festival these days is like definitely, is doing these programming not on the basis of like, you can't be a fan and program it, right? You have to look at Spotify numbers. You have to look at things like Google search trends. There are a lot of these metrics that they have and that they program. And so you have a lot of like, Jackson Wang, you have to have some K-pop person there, especially because BTS was another name floating around and like, obviously that was not going to happen, but you had to have some kind of K-pop representation and they got that. They got that,
Sorry, I have to make a quick aside. Was I the only one shocked that Sahil Makija, aka Demon Stealer, Things of All Metal, knew who Japanese breakfast was? I was like, what the fuck?
Like, I don't know.
Stereotypical.
Yeah.
Hey, no. I met Sahil. Guess where I met Sahil? Near the food stalls. And guess what I talked to him about? I talked to him only about food. And he told me that, hey, I haven't seen any act yet, but damn, the food stalls are fun.
Waiting for Sahil's vlog.
But like, coming back to the lineup thing, yes, everyone does look at metrics. But, festivals have an identity, even multi-genre festivals. I know there's a certain aesthetic, there's a certain way of thinking about music that animates, say, a Primavera or a Weekender. With Lollapalooza, I didn't get that. What does this festival stand for? The Indian festival market is not that differentiated, but in a differentiated market, every festival has an identity. Yeah. I didn't get an identity out of this Lollapalooza.
The very fact that Amit says supersized Weekender, and honestly, none of us are taking any kind of all of us accept it because that's really what it felt like.
To me, even Weekenders lineups are like, so the headliners especially, they're sort of there's no kind of, it's like any genre, right? It's not like there's a specific identity. I think your identity for Weekender is more from what the experience is like than what the lineup is like.
Now,
now, because there has a history. So I think Lolla, it was the first edition. Maybe they develop an identity as they go. What was Lolla internationally.
Someone put up a tweet of and actually I have to give credit to that person because they did the research and then they went and they're like, look, forget Lolla USA. This is the acts in South America. South America and India are getting such vastly different acts. And I don't know, man.
But again, South America has a long tradition of massive festivals and massive concerts.
It's just apples and oranges comparison. It's just...
Okay, Amit, you've done a brilliant list once again of essentially jotting down which international act first came to India. And for most of them, when they first came to India, and for most of them, even the first cities that they've played in. So commendable job. Is that going to be a public list that everyone can access?
Well, the thing is, I haven't done my homework. I haven't finished it on time. My intention was to make this a very comprehensive list to disprove the people who keep, whining about how India doesn't only gets acts when they're on their retirement tours, and which is simply not true anymore. And so I decided, okay, let me just write down the year that an act made its debut and their last sort of proper hit, because and when they were sort of relevant, even say just from a charts perspective, but. Haven't got around to doing that. I've just managed to do name of the act and the year they performed here, which still gives you an idea of how big they were at that time and when they visited. But of course, I think I sort of just did this just before we started talking to each other, and I decided when I got to 100, I'm going to stop here. Like I got to 100 names and that's about it. But I think you can see from that list and I've shared it with you guys, and I don't know whether I'll make it public because I don't think it's in a state right now. To eventually get around to sprucing it up a little, I will probably share it. But I think from that list, what's evident to me that it's become the pop acts you can get here. Have visited here much more in their heydays than the rock acts. And I think that a lot of this commentary is coming from rock fans, and it's a very rockist perspective, wherein, and just face it, it's probably much more expensive to bring a rock, right? Just in terms of, forget their own performance fee, they have the freight that's involved, all of that cost, they have so much equipment, like the Strokes themselves probably came up, I don't know how many trucks of equipment, because perhaps they don't trust that they'll get the same standard when they come.
I'd be actually curious to know who came with more like just equipment, and I'm bundling manpower into this equipment as well, Jackson Wang or the Strokes?
Yeah.
Because the guy...
the Strokes, because Jackson Wang... Yeah.
Unless you're counting the dancers.
I'm counting the dancers and all into that, which is why I said personal included.
Yeah, so wait, how many... Since I'm the only one who hasn't witnessed this, was the number of dancers that Jackson Wang brought in, what, more than 10?
Around that, yeah.
I don't remember, but I got like the first song because, like all of you, I wanted to see what it was all about.
Yeah,
and here's the
difference
between a Jackson Wang and an AP, right? Jackson Wang probably wasn't singing himself either, but he put on a great show. He was dancing. He was like this choreography. It was amazing. Whatever you saw.
Yeah.
And, so he's actually doing something. AP is like something.
But I don't know. Like as a first time AP Dhillon viewer, I really wasn't surprised as to what it was. I was kind of expecting this.
Really? I was expecting much more. And a lot of people said that, speaking of personnel, Gurinder Gill should have been there to sort of, make up the AP performance what it is. Because the sad thing is that it's like he's a solo act, but he's not, because all of his songs have 2 or 3 other guys on it. So, yeah.
What I did like about the AP Dhillon set is he made the white people in his band wear masks.
Oh, that's what I was going to be like, what the hell? So they were that, okay.
Yeah, he had white band members. So,
but sorry, Amit, I have to refer to your sheet here. First of all, kudos for doing it. I expect nothing less from you. You always exceed expectations when it comes to stuff like this. But you've mentioned the year 1999 and UB40 played in Bombay. I was at that concert at Andheri Sports Complex. Changed my life.
I think
my first concert experience.
My first concert experience was Campus Rock Idols in Chandigarh.
Wow.
Did you see the Rasmus?
No, Messiah headlining.
Oh, Messiah headlining.
Rasmus headlined the main thing. This is the Chandigarh thing.
Yeah, but I have missed out.
Yeah, so we were talking about the rockist perspective. What you missed out on is that we've had a lot of cutting-edge electronica acts come and play.
I'm keeping it to live acts because there's too many electronic acts.
But that's really where India is cutting edge. That's the area where you can really say that, the top acts you don't get as often, but we get some really cool acts who are near the top, who are experimental and cutting edge, because our promoters are doing an A game there, and they show that you don't have to spend an incredible amount of money to have a well curated lineup that introduces you to new sounds and new ideas. It really does what you're supposed to do as a festival.
I mean, like, I'll use 2 examples that come on top of my head. Like, Bhanuj, I don't know if you were at that show, the MTV Block Party. There was a 19-year-old Alesso that performed, of all places, as at the lawns of Raspberry Rhinoceros. And that was crazy because, like, I had no idea who he was. Sounded pretty much like everyone else, but he was one of the top there. But even didn't Ed Sheeran come in like when he was at his peak?
He came in 2015 where he was not as big as he was.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, but again, that concert, I went for it. It was like being in a train at Russia, except that your co-commuters are like 12-year-old girls.
Oh, and you missed out on the metal. Where is Bangalore open?
The metal is there.
All its cancelled lineups.
Oh my God! I think
that's okay. That's all. As the list isn't done yet. Right?
Daniel, I got to.
We can actually contribute into this list too, if you'd be okay with it.
Yeah, sure.
Alrighty. Thank you for spending all this time on Horns Up. I hope this gets heard. I hope people who really can influence decisions and make decisions end up listening to it, because I think this pretty much was a good comprehensive guide as to the hits and misses of Lollapalooza 2023. If you attended and would like to share your experience, why don't you do that? You can reach out to us at hornsuppod.com or on Twitter at hornsuppod. Gentlemen, do you want to blurt out your individual IDs so that flame wars can happen if need be? I'm at Asmawani on Twitter.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
I'm at Stoner Jesus on Twitter.
I'm at the Groove Box.
You have them. Better respond to us. Or who not? Nobody really listens. Okay. Bye, guys. Once up.
Bye.
Thanks so much. See ya.
Thanks so much.